Colin Chapman, the founder of Lotus Cars, once said, "Adding power makes you faster on the straights. Subtracting weight makes you faster everywhere." This ethos helped the Lotus Formula One team win 7 Constructors' Championships in the 1960s and 70s, and is still perfectly embodied within 21st century Lotus road cars, like this 2006 Exige. Porsche uses a different set of priorities for their modern sports cars, and the best word to sum it all up is balance. Not just in the traditional sense of handling balance or achieving that perfect power-to-weight ratio, but also in finding that ideal balance of performance, fun, build quality, and everyday usability. The 981 generation Cayman S embodies all of the above, perhaps better than any other Porsche to date. But what happens when you throw all that out the window? Like literally take pieces of the interior and chuck them out in the name of weight reduction. This 2015 Cayman S is just that, a stripped out, stiffened, massive wing-equipped track day monster. Can something that was originally designed to be the perfect all-purpose sports car really be modified to feel as insanely visceral and responsive as a sub 2,000 pound Exige? So shortly after Lotus released the S2 Elise in North America, they decided to come out with a more hardcore variant called the Exige. Now this car is based on the Elise, but it's harder to get in and out of, harder to see out of, and less comfortable on the street. So what is the point of the Exige? This is intended to be more of a track day weapon than a canyon carver. And while we can't test the track day prowess of the Exige today, we can at least drive it on this beautiful, super smooth canyon road with lots of different corners and test the handling ability of this car. Since this is a 2006 model, it retains the high-revving, naturally aspirated Toyota 2ZZ 1.8 liter 4-cylinder engine. Now, Eddie, the owner of this car, told me that when he first got the car, it only dynoed at around 140 or so horsepower, but after intake headers, exhaust, and a tune, he actually managed to squeeze 190 wheel horsepower out of the car. Now this particular car is not stock. It has Öhlins TTX, it has the tune, the bolt-ons that I mentioned, and crucially it has an aftermarket limited slip differential. That VVTi crossover at 5500 is just crazy sounding. So much grip, so much steering feel. Yes. This car is just so utterly raw. It feels quite a bit more hardcore than the Elise. The rear visibility is close to zero because you have that hatch over the engine, whereas the Elise actually gives you a small rear window. The car makes all of its power at the top end of the rev range, 5,500 to around 8,000, and it's just a joy to keep the engine singing at those high revs. With the Sector 111 aftermarket shifter, the shifts are really short and sweet and crisp. This car is super light at around 2,000 pounds, and coupled with the Öhlins TTX suspension, the limited slip differential, and these Toyo R888R tires, this feels like the grippiest car I've ever driven. The car is super stiff, and so you feel everything through the seat as well as the steering wheel. Completely throws comfort out the window. The super wide door sill on the left here means my knee has seen better days. The brakes are incredible. This car really stops on a dime. Just keep in mind, if you have big feet, this is not the car for you. I wear a 9.5 size shoe, and when I go to heel toe downshift, my feet actually touch each other between the clutch and brake pedal. I never had a problem with the stock open differential in either the Elise or the Exige, because the car is so light and it's mid-engine, it has weight over that rear axle. With this limited slip differential, I'm not sure the exact spec, if it's a 1.5 way or a 2-way. The moment I let off the throttle to make an adjustment mid-corner, the car very abruptly turns in more sharply. It's not very smooth, that transition from locking to not locking. Notice here on the throttle, then when I get off the throttle, it just darts in. I think that is the way it's supposed to work. I've just never driven a car with an LSD where the transition from on-off throttle is that abrupt. Yeah, this is an intense driving experience. All in all, this does really feel like a street legal track car. So now I'm very curious to find out if the Porsche 981 Cayman S, which is a much more street comfort focused car, with a bunch of track prep done to it, if it can be as fun, visceral, and exciting as this mildly modified Exige. A Porsche 981 Cayman S in stock form is a comfortable, practical, and everyday drivable sports car. It's got 2 trunks, it's got a luxurious interior, plenty of creature comforts, but the owner of this car, Qua, has taken this 981 Cayman S to a whole new level. This one is completely stripped out for track use. It's currently making about 330 wheel horsepower from its 3.4 liter naturally aspirated flat 6 engine. Qua also told me that this car weighs around 3,200 pounds from the factory with all the options ticked. This car, with the interior stripped out and all the lightweight modifications he's done to it, has brought it down to about 2,900 pounds. Compared to the Lotus Exige, that's still almost half a ton heavier. This is a more balanced car. It has torque. This one has a PDK transmission. And as we'll find out, it sounds absolutely insane. Listen to that engine. I gotta say, this car, even though it's fully modified for the track, it feels a lot more refined and insulated than the Lotus. The PDK transmission is flawless. The shifts are lightning quick. I do wish the gearing was a little bit shorter, but on the racetrack, I'm sure this is perfect. I think my favorite part of this car is actually the suspension. The JRZ RS Pros is one of the best coilovers you can get for any car that has them available. This car cannot be upset by any bumps, even on a canyon road. It just feels absolutely solid and planted. Around 330 wheel horsepower, it actually doesn't feel that quick. I think that's largely due to the fact that I'm so insulated compared to the Lotus Exige. I mean, I know that sounds crazy. After hopping out of the Exige, hopping into this one, this feels almost like a luxury car. Yes. I think while Qua has undoubtedly done an amazing job at modifying this car to be a track weapon, the main thing holding it back for me is not what Qua has done, but actually what Porsche has done. With the 981 generation Cayman, they introduced for the first time electric power steering. The 987, like the one I used to own, had hydraulic steering. And while the hydraulic rack was full of feedback, this rack really doesn't tell the driver a whole lot about what the front tires are doing. And as a result, I don't feel as confident attacking corners in this car, especially compared to the Exige. Now that being said, if you buy a 981 Cayman S, you don't have to take it as far as Qua has with this car. I think the sweet spot for one of these cars, for me personally, is a lightly modified example that can be used as a daily driver on the street, in the canyons, as well as the occasional track day. Overall, I think the Exige is still a lot more of a visceral and engaging driving experience, while this car probably has more outright performance due to its aero, its suspension setup, its straight line performance for sure. But if you spent the same money modifying an Exige, I'm sure you could match or even surpass the level of this Cayman S. So a couple of hours and many apexes later, I had my answer. This Cayman S and this Exige both love to attack twisty roads and racetracks alike. Both cars aren't without compromise, as neither is suited to commuting or grocery hauling duties. Nevertheless, I was reminded yet again that the key to pure driving enjoyment is sometimes really simple. Less weight, more better. Pure driving experiences just don't get much purer than the Lotus Exige. As a certain English race car builder once said, simplify, then add lightness. It's an ethos I hope manufacturers and builders of real driver's cars will never forget.